Our next presentation is by Matthias Röder, who is the Managing Director of the Karajan Institute, which supports interdisciplinary research in fields such as museology, medicine, and computational science. The main target is to connect the results of scientific works with our knowledge or our thinking about musical interpretation. Matthias Röder holds a PhD in music from Harvard and is an alumni of the University of Mozarteum, Salzburg. And he's going to talk to us today from Salzburg. Dr. Röder, where are you? The floor is yours.
I'm here. I hope you can see me.
Now I can see you. We can see you. Great.
Fantastic.
To see you again.
It's great to be there with you, or not to be there with you, but to be with you. I'm going to share my screen. I hope that you can then see my presentation. Please do let me know if you don't see the presentation. I think that's the case. Okay, wonderful. Well, last year in June, I received a phone call from Deutsche Telekom's, one of Deutsche Telekom's top managers. And he said, I have an idea. Is it possible to finish Beethoven's 10th symphony with the help of AI? Well, I immediately had to think about my favorite Beethoven anecdote. And it goes like this. So while rehearsing one of the last string quartets by Beethoven, the famous violin player, Ignaz Schupanzig, turned to Beethoven and said, Beethoven, you surely do not consider this to be music, do you? To which Beethoven supposedly replied, well, Schupanzig, you surely don't think that I composed it for you. I composed it for the future. Well, I don't know if that story is really true. It's certainly a great story. And it also highlights one of the great strengths of Beethoven. And that is that he was constantly redefining what music meant. There is perhaps no other composer in the history of music that has revolutionized compositions as much and as often as he did. Just think about his 9th symphony and the Ode to Joy. The first time ever that a chorus, solo music, operatic elements, and a big orchestra were integrated into one movement of music. Today, that experiment of music is the European anthem. For me, Beethoven is the most daring composer of music of the future. Of course, that future is today. And I'm pretty sure that Beethoven could not have predicted something like artificial intelligence. That we would have little computers that show us the way, or that we can talk to and they talk back, answering questions about the world. Nor would he have predicted that we can use machines to make silly Instagram filters, or even art, like in this really interesting video where you take the style of a painting and transfer that then onto moving video. One of our team members at the Beethoven project is Professor Ahmed El-Gamal of Art Rendex, and I believe he's going to give a presentation to you tomorrow at this conference. Now, he trained an artificial neural network on millions of artworks and then used it to create original artworks. He then presented these artworks in an exhibition at Art Basel without telling people that this was created by an AI. And he interviewed the people who were at the presentation, and surprisingly they said, well, this is very human-like, it's very emotional, it talks to me on an emotional level. Another group created an AI that painted a portrait in the style of Rembrandt. Well, no single brushstroke on this image was created by Rembrandt, nor does it appear in any of Rembrandt's paintings. It is a copy of the style of Rembrandt. The system reproduces the style, learns from a lot of examples, is never told how to paint other than from learning from examples. In our project for Deutsche Telekom, we're taking a similar route, a similar approach. It's a team that consists of scientists from music, from computer science, from music theory and music informatics. We also have a composer on board, Walter Verzova. You see here Professor Robert Levin from Harvard University, who's an advisor on the project. And what we do is we train the AI on the music of Beethoven, but also the music of contemporaries. And don't worry if you see composers here on the picture that come after Beethoven's death or very early on. This is just to represent what we do visually. So in a way, the AI learns like a human student, example after the example, working on their own work, but learning from others. So once training is done, we then generate music not out of thin air, but we actually go to the sketches of Ludwig van Beethoven himself. You see here in the upper left corner a page from one of these sketchbooks, and then in the middle a magnification of one of these sketches. And as you can probably tell, it's really, really hard to read and to decipher, and it often is just one idea, not very elaborate. And so it has to be interpreted. So that's why we talk to experts at the Beethoven House, why we have discussions on a musicological level to actually understand what it even means that we are seeing on this page. Then we translate what we think we see on the page into a human readable format, then into a machine readable format. And it's in this representation that the AI then gets to know the sketch of Beethoven and then continues it note by note in the style that it has learned in the training phase. Now, when we started the project, Deutsche Telekom asked us if for the press conference we could produce a little bit of music with the AI so that people could get a little sample. And we said, sure, we can do that. We did it with one of the sketches and produced the music for the musicians so that they could play it. There's a string quartet and a piano. Has obviously not much to do with a full orchestra, but it was a way for us to show the people what the AI is capable of doing back then in December. Now, I would love to play this for you. I got to tell you a little story, though. When the musicians got together for rehearsal, we got an excited phone call from Deutsche Telekom asking us, well, the musicians, they're wondering, where is the music of the AI? And they actually had it in their music. So it was very difficult for them to tell where does Beethoven end and where does the AI start. So I want to play a little game with you, if you allow me, and if you would like to play it. And now play you the music while you can listen to it, and then maybe raise your arm, raise your hand when you believe that Beethoven ends and the AI takes over. If you like, you can close your eyes so that you don't get distracted by your neighbors sitting around you, or you simply listen and observe. And then afterwards, I'll give you the solution of this little musical riddle. So I hope you can hear this. If not, I'm looking forward to fixing the audio, but here you go. Enjoy. So I didn't see a lot of hands go up here, but there's also a very small image for me. The sketch of Beethoven is only 12 seconds long in this piece of music, and all of the rest was composed by the AI. Of course, you know, some people may think that the result will never be as good as Beethoven, or that we're even trying to replace the humans in the equation and you know, make composers superfluous. But that is not what we want to do with this project. Instead, what this project is about is the question of how far our imagination can really go. When we are no longer starting out here, you know, but here, when we don't have to study 10 years of music theory and practice scales all day long to express ourselves musically. When we can easily visualize an idea, or when we can create a film by describing scenes and interactions with words and gestures. In such a world, we will be forced to grow beyond ourselves, because machines are going to do the repetitive tasks, and automation will take care of many technical processes in the compositional process. Getting us there is, of course, challenging, and it's changing the creative process. This is something that we experienced firsthand in our project as we grew and made progress. I just want to give you a few examples of how the interaction between the AI, the technology, and us humans has challenged us and really moved the creative process forward. The first one is something that the musician in the other room at the end of the live performance mentioned. It's how do you create the experiences that make up an artist's life as a curated set of training data for the AI? So in a way, what an artist experiences throughout their life that makes up their experiences, their way of looking at music, art, the world in general. How do you simulate that when you work with an artificial intelligence? That's, of course, a curatorial job of creating the training set. And in our case, for instance, at the very early stages, we did a workshop in the Beethoven House in Bonn. And through a mistake we made in the training, there was some popular music in the training set. And so, of course, the results we got from the AI had, you know, a certain kind of Beatles or, you know, other kind of pop music ring to it, which was not intended. It was actually quite funny, but you can play around with that in a creative process when you interact with the machine. And that we thought was very, very interesting. And we learned from it and then played around with the right kind of mix of music that comes from Beethoven himself, but also contemporaries that he knew, music that he had studied, music of the time. The second aspect that we found quite interesting was finding a common language. And not only in the sense of this is an interdisciplinary project where we have computer scientists talk to musicologists, talk to composers. Often it's really hard to find the right words to talk to one another because there's a vocabulary missing in which we can communicate. But we're also thinking about the way that what the machine gives us as a result, has an impact on our thinking and how we can, react to the material we get from the AI. Because obviously we're going through a lot of iterations in the creative process, and finding that way in which you understand what the AI gives you, that was quite interesting and has changed the way we actually, compose music now outside of the project. And the last point I want to make in regards to the creative process is then the act of translating the output from the project into the world of the musicians, into the world of the humans that then sit in a concert and listen to the music. It is, of course, a technical process from the internal representation of the music in the artificial neural network to a machine-readable music format, then into a score that musicians can read, but also, you know, making sure that the idiomatic expressions and capabilities of an orchestra are represented in the score. All of this is a steep learning curve when you work in such a interdisciplinary AI-driven project. Ultimately, I believe that with the help of technology, we are, you know, democratizing creativity to a certain extent. Humans, in my opinion, are made for creativity, for being creative. Our brains are wired in such a way that we constantly want to try out new things. Now, if we as humans are creative, there truly is almost no limit. And seen in this way, creative AI for me will always be an inspirational and inspiring AI, because it inspires us to think differently, be surprised, or go beyond our current capabilities. The result is what I call augmented intelligence. It is also AI, but not purely artificial. It is a human-machine interaction. Now, if I could ask you to take one thing away from my talk, it would be this. In my opinion, technology will not replace humans. It will continue to enable us. It will enable us to create and find solutions for the most daring problems we are facing as entrepreneurs, societies, as a species. It was the combination of technology and humans that brought us to the moon. And it will be the combination of human and machine intelligence that will bring us the next musical genius. And most likely he or she will come from a place that none of us expects. Over the course of the next years, we will, every one of us in the room where you are, here in my room, we will reinvent ourselves over and over again. And we will reinvent the way we live, the way we work. Each time, the central question we will have to ask ourselves is, what kind of future do I want to build? How can technology get me there? And that, I think, is the power of combining creativity and technology. And just as Beethoven, we will then be able to say, we build it for the future. Thanks a lot, guys. And I hope that you'll have a really inspiring end of the day with the next program points. Thank you.